We're ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. I'd like to reopen the Harwich Board of Selectmen's meeting for October 26, 2020. We opened the meeting at 6 o'clock and then went into executive session in which we consider pursuant to the MGL 30A Section 21A6, consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position. We had that discussion. We didn't conclude that yet. We have at least one more meeting to raise a conclusion. We did then return to open meeting, and we'll proceed now. I'll start by asking you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just as a reminder for those who maybe have joined us, if you wish to ask a question or make a comment during the meeting, you need to email us at comment@town.harwich.ma.us. And Jamie then will wave us down so you can join our discussion. Moving next then to weekly briefing. Joe, our usual COVID-19, you and Megan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn it right over to our Public Health Director, which, as at least of the writing of the memo, was very encouraging news for the town of Harwich, while there's less encouraging news statewide, but I'll leave that to Megan to address.
Hey everybody, I'm not sure why my hair looks purple on this video, but in any case, we did have encouraging news last week where our positivity rate decreased down to 0.82%, and our incidence rate almost cut in half from 4.5 to 2.3. However, on Friday, we started gaining new cases. And since Friday, we have had 6 new positives in the town of Harwich. So our total has gone up from 168 on Friday to 174 today. And we're following 7 active cases. And this is pretty much how things are going throughout Barnstable County as well as the state itself. We're seeing bigger numbers of positive cases on a daily basis. We're testing a whole lot of people every day within the whole state. Today we tested over 20,000 people with 1,200 positives. And I thought perhaps we were just seeing numbers coming in from the weekend, but every day, the last few days, we've seen positives in the thousands. So we're looking back at numbers that are looking closer to what we were seeing back in May and June. However, our hospitalizations and fatalities are much different than they were back then. We're not seeing the fatalities or hospitalizations like we were, which is a very good thing. Our demographic is a younger crowd that's testing positive. So they don't have the underlying conditions that we were seeing within the long-term care facilities that caused a lot of the deaths. But with the increases since Friday, we probably won't stay in the gray that we are right now. We may even creep into the red because of this. Will definitely be either yellow or red on Thursday. So the Department of Public Health has started, instead of Wednesday evening coming out with the data, they're now putting it out Thursday morning. So Thursday morning, we'll see where we are, and hopefully we can change our trajectory and start coming down so we don't remain in red for more than 3 weeks at a time. Because if we have 3 weeks of red, we have to take a step back in the phase 3. So hopefully we'll keep up with testing and wearing our masks and social distancing. We've had some questions lately about the travel order in regards to the upcoming holidays. And the travel order is pretty clear when you read it on mass.gov website. If you're going to a higher risk state, which is any state aside from Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Connecticut, or New Jersey, or if you're fortunate enough to go out to Hawaii or Washington State. But if you're traveling to one of the higher risk states, even if it's just for a day to visit friends or family for the holidays and you come back, you're still subject to the travel order. And that is to fill out the form and then to quarantine for 14 days when you get back, or produce a negative test result within 72 hours of return. So we're getting questions from the school system about what do we do if we hear that kids have gone out of state for the holidays and then return on the following Monday. And the answer is pretty complicated because as a local Board of Health, we're not subject to enforcing the travel order. So it would go up to the state Department of Public Health. And so far I haven't heard that they are taking a real hard stance on it. So we hope that people understand the importance of it. Going to a higher risk state and coming back, you are at a higher risk of being exposed. So it's very important to come home and make sure you're negative before you return to school or work. And the testing of people for the travel order, if you're over the age of 10, so if you're 11 or over, you are subject to the test. If you're 10 or younger, you wouldn't need to get the nasal swab or the cheek swab, and you could rely on your parents' test results instead. So that's one of our bigger questions right now, is traveling and how to plan for the holidays. Barnstable County saw 24 new cases today. So again, we're seeing an increase in cases. So it's really important to social distance and maintain your guard when it comes to going out to places and seeing new people. Keep your circle as small as you can, and make sure you're wearing your mask and not going to work if you're feeling sick. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up was we do have another flu clinic scheduled for Thursday. It is at the community center again, and it's a drive-through. It's from 2 to 4 p.m. and we do have space available. So if anyone is in need of a flu shot, that is a Harwich resident or an employee, a spouse of an employee, or even a parent and child that goes to one of our school systems, you're welcome to sign up by calling our department or emailing us. And it's 508-430-7509 or health@town.harwich.ma.us. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Megan, I have one regarding, and thank you for that report, by the way. I wish the news was a little more positive, but nice, concise report. Outdoor seating. How many restaurants do you feel are still, I noticed I've driven by some that have taken down their tents and so on.
I couldn't quite hear all that. You kind of sound like you're underwater, but I think you were asking about outdoor seating.
Yeah, how many restaurants are maintaining outdoor seating?
So restaurants, as long as they have requested on their extension through the Board of Selectmen for their outdoor seating, they can continue to do that. With the tents, some people have asked what do we do with the tents? Do we have to have all four sides down, or can we have all four sides down? And the answer is, if you put all four sides down, or three sides even, you're considered an indoor dining establishment. So you would have to adhere to the indoor dining rules, which is still 6 feet between tables, 10 people at a table, but you wouldn't be allowed to have entertainment. So if you put the flaps down on your tents, or you have outdoor dining, you're not allowed to have entertainment that goes along with the outdoor seating.
I guess my question was more, I know a restaurant near me in East Harwich is taking their tent down, apparently giving up on outdoor. I was wondering, is that, are many deciding to, with the cold weather, to give that up and not take advantage of the extension, or do you have a sense of that?
Not yet. I've seen a few tents come down, but we don't know what the weather's going to do for the next month or so. And I think the restaurants are trying to squeeze out as much as they can. I know a few of the places that are traditionally seasonal, like the Wachusett and some of the other restaurants that normally shut down at the end of November, have taken in the tents. But I know the Port still has their tent out back, and the Lanyard, and even Jake Rooney's, I think they added another tent. So I think Cindy may be able to answer that a little better than me, but I think the restaurants are trying to extend the season as much as they can.
Yeah. Thank you, Megan. Joe?
Yeah, with the board's vote to extend that beyond November 1st, we did communicate with all the establishments that presently have outdoor seating, and we've asked them to advise us of their intentions and their plans. And certainly if they've started taking apparatus down, we do want to be aware of that. Last week, I believe we heard from 2 establishments that were looking to take their tents down, and that was it. So as we get more information, I'll add that to the updates.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Thanks again, Megan.
Thanks, Megan.
You're welcome.
Joe, I guess we'll invite Cindy next.
Absolutely. I know she's prepped and ready to go, so I'll turn it over to our Chamber of Commerce Director.
Good evening, everyone. As Megan and Joe just stated, some have taken down the tents. Larry, to answer yours, 400 East did take theirs down last Wednesday. They've just decided, now that they've made the appropriate additions inside to their dining, as well as the tent company wanting it taken down due to impending weather as it goes on, they all agreed that last Wednesday 400 East would come down. They would have liked to, but they've also spent a lot of money inside, updating it to make it safe. They've put plexiglass in between all of the booths, as well as plexi in front of when you sit at the bar, in front of the server there as well. So some of the restaurants that are taking their tents down, that's what I was actually going to start doing this week, is updating the public what the restaurants are doing to make it safe, make customers feel safer to dine inside. The 400 East is one that's done an extensive amount of work inside, as well as Lalauette. They've redecorated the inside, as well as added new flooring to theirs, as well as they have an announcement coming later this week that we'll share next Monday. Mad Minnow and Three Monkeys I heard from also, and they have been working on ventilation and heating options inside, as well as cleaning even more extensively than they already did, and buying extra supplies to make it all safe. What I'd like to do over the next couple of weeks as the weather changes is give the updates of what the restaurants are doing. Tonight kind of started that. So that's it from here for right now.
Thank you, Cindy. Any questions for Cindy? Thanks again, and we appreciate being kept informed on that. And I'm sure anything we can do to get the message out that the restaurants are taking a lot of steps to be safe.
Absolutely. That's the next agenda thing that we'll start doing over the next few weeks, is just keeping everyone updated so they can feel that it's safe to go to their favorite Harwich restaurant.
Thank you. Moving next to public comments.
Larry?
Steve?
Yeah, Ginny Hewitt asked that I do an announcement for Brooks Free Library. Brooks Free Library has expanded their grab-and-go inside hours to Saturdays. Patrons can visit the library to come inside and select materials on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., Thursday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. No appointment is needed. 30 patrons are allowed inside at one time, and visits must be limited to 30 minutes or less. The children's play area and the second floor are not open, but good browsing collections of materials from those areas are available on the first floor. One computer is available by appointment. Masks or other face coverings must be worn and cover the nose and mouth completely. If all continues to go well, the library expects to expand inside hours to full days on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, beginning the week of November the 16th. The hours will be Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. No contact curbside pickup continues to be offered full days on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for those who wish to limit exposure to others during the pandemic. Barring any rollback of restrictions locally or statewide, the library plans to continue this hybrid schedule through the fall and winter months.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet.
Anyone else for public comment? If not, we'll move to the consent agenda.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as follows. A, vote to approve Caleb Chase fund request in the amount of $1,000. And B, vote to approve the chairman to sign Green Communities Annual Report for the staff to submit as presented.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? If not, I'll take a roll call. Stephen?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
I'm an aye. Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Pass. Thank you, Michael, and thanks for your votes. Next is new business, and Joel, this comes back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, let me start out with apologies. We had difficulties. We had a catastrophic power failure on half of the building that knocked out the town clerk's operation on Friday and impacted us in administration. So I know there were late adds to the agenda, to the packet. And hopefully everybody has the memorandum that I wrote for the board on this topic, as well as the email from the town planner to me on that. But if you have that available and for the board, there was one monosyllabic two-letter word that I left out that is critical. So I would just draw your attention to the paragraph that starts, as you may already be aware.
On your memo or from the planning?
Sorry, this is my memo to start, and it's the paragraph that states, as you may already be aware, and goes down to the bottom where it says that unless and until the Board of Selectmen are advised that there is a pending 40B project, and will inform all relevant public bodies that they should, three words, not, or three letters, not engage in conceptual discussions. So again, the overall point of this memo and the discussion tonight was, and I know Mr. Howell can speak probably better than I can to it, but last week there was a discussion at Affordable Housing Trust on an alleged 40B project, and the purpose of this memo is to just advise everybody that there at present is no 40B project. I know there's been considerable discussion, and the board was looking at potentially having a discussion this evening with the community at large. Mr. Wise, who is already approved for a 10-lot subdivision in East Harwich, may be contemplating a broader project. Now, I say may because the town has no official information yet, and I don't say that to be cagey. I say that because there's a very precise process that should occur. Were there to be a 40B project, the developer would have to partner with a subsidizing agency, most typically Mass Housing Partnership. So when I became aware that there were documents that had been presented to public bodies, such as the Housing Committee back in September, and I think a second time in October, and potentially for the Affordable Housing Trust, quite simply, that was premature on the developer's part. He did explain that he was looking to gather community input and he and I will have a conversation later this week about some suggestions I have for him on that. But the point I want the board to understand is that, as I've learned it, when a project is scheduled to go forward on 40B development, the applicant has to provide a project eligibility letter, or a PEL, and that is in concert with the subsidizing agency, which typically, again, is Mass Housing Partnership. That's significant because once that PEL is initiated, once that letter goes out, it goes out to the subsidizing agency and the Board of Selectmen directly. And there's a process by which the board would then, at a public meeting, offer that up for agenda discussion. It doesn't require a public hearing, but it is certainly meant for the board to gain public input. And we're nowhere near that phase right now. So the purpose of this memorandum and the information provided from the town planner builds off of a discussion I gave last Thursday, and it's really just to let everybody know that if and or when there's a 40B project before the town, the board would be one of the first agencies to find out about that through staff, and we would certainly endeavor to do all the requirements. And I think I can understand the frustration of the general public that's manifested to you all with hundreds of signatures to petitions. But quite simply put, there's nothing to discuss formally yet. Again, I'll reach back out to the developer. We'll have a conversation about any proposed projects he may have coming before the town. But I think I understand why the general public was anxious, because I think anytime a concept goes before a public body, people think that that's the town, and whether the town is the planning board, zoning board, selectmen, or another committee really isn't the point. So there was discussions on concepts, but there's nothing formal yet. Once there is, bring that back before the board. What I want the board to take from this, again, at the end of that memo, I say it's my recommendation that if there's any prospective applicant for any future project, that they should strongly consider they engaging in a community forum or a community input event that they can do quite easily before anything comes back to the public bodies, because once it comes back to the public bodies, it's usually very heavily regulated, and there's deadlines and other procedures to follow.
Thank you, Joe. I very much appreciate you researching this and explaining it to us tonight, and to the public as they read this, and to the Housing Trust. Don, thank you for your leadership in this, and I'll give you the floor next, because we're trying to make sense of this and put it back into some order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, you know, I've discussed this with you over the past year, actually. I went back and I have to thank Joe for, doing all this research and coming up with the path that showed that we were heading significantly off the path. The thing that concerns me is, even if we have a process, and we are talking about making sure anything that happens of that magnitude, that's a 40B project, starts out at the corner office, so that there's an awareness on the part of governance, there's something happening. But that relies on the goodwill of the person sitting in the corner office. And I went back and tortured myself into watching myself again and the rest of the trust in the July 2019 meeting. Not only in that meeting where the words "we" came up, the word "we" came up a lot relative to the then chair of the trust. About we have had discussions on the staff level and directly, but Chris actually verified that there were at least 3 meetings with the town administrator over this, the then town administrator. I believe in my heart, I mean, I understand that there was no real application, but that was the rub. I mean, I was trying to head this thing off because it was taking on a life of its own, and there wasn't a real project. I referred to it on a number of times last year as we don't know what it is because it hasn't been fleshed out. The point of the matter is that there was legitimate concern on the part of the public because they believed that something was actually in the works, and there were numbers of meetings, both in the planning office and the town administrator's office. And we got to make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen again, because I know if Art Bowden had it to do all over again, he wouldn't have wanted to take that vote feeling that he felt somewhat duped. But the fact is that he came in with what looked like a legitimate project, but short-circuited the whole process because there was no project eligibility letter. There were pages missing, so there was no real submission. But the public had every reason to believe that something was going on because there had been discussions about it apparently in town hall. And I mean, ultimately, the best course of action for us moving forward is to make sure that nothing happens without public input. Hopefully, Chris Wise heeds our advice because we made, I believe you were on the call, we made that point to him that if he wants to do community outreach, because he promised a year and a half ago he was going to go knock on doors. That obviously did not happen. But there was a reasonable belief, especially fueled at a planning board meeting last year, where they gave him, and that hasn't been discussed tonight, but everybody who wants to do a 40B has the option of going in and getting an approved site plan for what they'd be able to do legitimately under zoning. That's an as-right thing that they could do. He did do that. He got 10 lots out of it as an approval, but the question was specifically asked at that point, is that what he wants to do? And the answer was, that's all we know he's doing. But obviously, if he was meeting in town hall, there was more to it than that. So, I mean, I hope we never find ourselves in this position again, because it's really difficult, to extricate yourself when there's a belief that's based on some actual evidence. But as long as I'm involved, as long as Joe's involved, the process is going to be followed because that's what has to happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Don. Any other questions or comments? Michael?
I'm going to reserve most of my comments for when this comes back. I think someone gave me some advice. But he did say, when he applied for the 10-lot subdivision, that that's all he was doing.
That
Correct?
troubles me, yeah.
Right. So this conversation started in July of 19 about a big project, but then he came forward, told the neighborhood, who was here in force, the abutters, that that's all we're doing. So I'll leave it at that. I would request that, Joe, after you speak to Chris Wise, I think that there is a fair amount of residents, Don said last week, north of 600.
Well,
that are extremely-
700 now.
Yeah, that are extremely concerned about this, so I would like an update via memo or either at the next board meeting of what this conversation is and what direction he's going. And then I would like to just follow up on the question I asked about sewer regulations unrelated to this project, so that I'm not showing any bias. But I'd like to know if legally we can have a sewer regulation based on what town meeting purchased and what we told town meeting was gonna happen in East Harwich. Can we create a sewer regulation prohibiting these large projects based on the build-out that we had? So I'd asked for a legal opinion, you endorsed that legal opinion.
I did, and
Can we get the
we're,
legal
and we're trying to get it now.
Okay.
Larry, can I
That's some other
second that?
discussions.
In that July meeting, I specifically said to him that there would, given what we had promised the town voters, that we were going to have to create an offset to be able to pull off a major project like that should the community want to do it. That got lost in the translation. I'm positive we can create something that, not for this particular project, but just in general holds to the promise that we're not doing this to give an opportunity for people to build like crazy. We're doing it to fix the sewage problem that got created through decades.
I would only say to that we've had some initial discussions and looking at all our options on what we can, by regulations and legally do. Again, unfortunately, this went out of all known processes and caused a lot of discomfort in town. So I appreciate Joe, you and Don bringing this back. And Michael, you've had good comments on it as
Well, I
well.
apologize to the public
We
too,
need
because
to,
they were legitimately concerned.
We need to bring this, and I think we've reined this in, and now we'll put it back in order. Okay, any other comments? If not, we'll move on to Michael.
I move that we approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes for 12/2/2019 and 12/9/2019.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yay.
Yeah, I know.
They continue to be excellent.
I'll take a roll call vote. Michael?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we'll move ahead then to contracts.
I move that we approve the grant agreement between the Board of Selectmen and the Affordable Housing Trust regarding 2020 Annual Town Meeting, Article 33.
Second.
Second? Don, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I want to divulge that I'm on both sides of this contract, so I don't know that I have a fiduciary interest personally. So I'll do whatever the pleasure of the board is. I mean, I'd like to be able to vote, but I will recuse myself if you want me to.
Michael,
I don't think that Don has any fiduciary responsibility here at all. He can't gain in any way, shape, or form. He's on two different boards, and there's it's always a majority vote, so I have no problem with Don voting.
nor do I, is anyone else?
No.
Because we've asked Don to chair that committee, so we can't penalize him at the same time we've asked him to
Oh,
help.
sure you can.
Well, we can, but we won't.
Don, did you send that around?
Yeah, I have the documents, that nothing's been
So
signed.
Okay.
it would be the board signing tonight, Don would sign on behalf of the trust, and then it would go to Dave Nixon for the CPC to
CPC.
finally execute that.
And then we can execute the
There was a problem with last
grant.
year's, yep.
Don?
Yeah, and I do have a concern, and I'm mentioning this because I've said this before. I'm not interested in spending money just because we have it. We pulled the plug on the community engagement part of the contract for the rules of operation for the housing trust because we couldn't get the kind of public input we wanted to. It's in a hiatus right now. So we still have that money out there that we have not spent. I believe Joe, and I think Larry got a copy of the report. I'm just concerned, and I want to make sure that our legal counsel looks over this because this CPC is getting advice from what it equates to a statewide organization of CPCs, but it's not a governmental organization. And they've talked about, and I really appreciate it because I asked Dave to do that as the liaison there. Don't hold the door open forever. People may never finish these things and you've got money encumbered. This is a different kind of animal. You want to be able to have money so that when you have a real legitimate project, you can buy it down and make it look like you want the town to see. Because there's no economics in a really small, like 8, 12, 16, unit place. The economics are really daunting. So you really need to have capital available to you. And it wouldn't serve any purpose to go through a revolving door to just get the money, return the money, and request money again. So I'd really like our legal counsel to look into the retention requirements and see if it's really a requirement.
Michael?
Just briefly, CPC committee has done an outstanding job over the last 2 or 3 years vetting projects, going back to projects that weren't spent, putting money back in the pool. So hats off to them for that. And then I think there's really, to Don's point, I'm fine with a legal opinion, but communication between the Board of Selectmen and CPC.
Yeah.
They're all looking out for the best interests of the town as well, and I think that that was a great statement. I would like to see us build something or some sort of affordable housing, so I'm going to be an advocate of going forward with something, but I think communication goes a long way, and if the contract comes up and we haven't spent the money yet, a simple meeting with CPC, I think would go a long way, and I think that they have the best interest of the town in mind with these grant agreements, so. we asked them to
It
do
looks a little self-serving coming from just me, however, so I just wanted to let you guys know that that's what we have in mind, and if the selectmen would like to weigh in, it would be extremely helpful.
No, I think good points, because we've asked CPC, and Michael, to your point, they've done a great job of tracking our funds, to be sure.
He's
there's
only doing what we
accountability,
asked him to do.
And they're doing what we ask him to do correctly. And now we have the little wrinkles. We want to be sure that we keep the door open for housing trusts which may need, but the communication is critical. So we move forward. We need a vote on that then, right?
That's right.
We have a motion. We have a motion in a second. I'll take a roll call vote. Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Old business is update of the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund. Don, I think you're still discussing this, so.
Yeah, I could give you an update, but it's a moving target. November 5th, we have another meeting. The sticking point was the percentages that the towns get back, and that obviously is going to impact how everybody feels. The only thing I will say is, before the end of the calendar year, we're probably going to want to put a submission in ourselves when this gets all ironed out, because we have project expenses that are eligible.
Okay.
The bottom line is, if you're a state revolving fund, for SRF funding, that if you've done the project before, you're eligible to submit for it. So we want to be able to be ready when that time comes.
I think, Joel, that's something to keep track of in terms of staff support, to see what we can, maybe
That's
put
why I'm
it on your
mentioning it.
particular file, and we can bring us an update of when Don's next report and see what we can do with it. Any other, we'll come back then after your next discussion. Next is a discussion of possible vote of interim town administrators' goals and objectives. I know, Joel, you and Steve have been working on this, and we just got this hard copy tonight.
Again, apologies for that, but what I'd like to very quickly walk the board through is, tried to update the goals and whenever possible, tie it back to specific selectmen goals. So if you look at the performance management plan proposed for me, you can see under municipal finance and budgeting, the second item there, develop a budget for fiscal year 2022 that is at most 2% higher than fiscal year 2021, and that specifically ties back to goal number 2 of the board, but specifically your objectives A, B, and C. And so that's what I've tried to do throughout the document, is working off of your original draft goals for me to try and tie them back to the board's goals overall, because I think in the end what we're both looking for is for me to support the board as you go through your goals, and for me to inculcate them as my own, as well as cascade them down throughout the organization.
Okay, since we got these at the last minute, I suggest that, Steve, let me, before I suggest anything, let me
Yeah,
throw it over to
no,
you.
no, I think I'm going to say what you were going to say. I'd like an opportunity just to kind of look a little closer at how he synced it and, do a little wordsmithing. But I know that we want to do our first review very quickly here, and I'm cognizant that that's very important. So I really don't want to hold it up unnecessarily, but if it's possible, I'd like to
Okay.
have a chance
If-
to.
Michael?
You both took the wind out of my sails, so I would say that I think we're ready for a review.
Yeah, yeah.
Based on the first goal, which pertained to town meeting, so I think that we could schedule the review,
Review.
however we're gonna do that, without delaying this, but I would like one more week to read through this as well.
I'll do both. I'll
But-
schedule a review, because we do want to do that quickly. Times.
Yeah,
And I would
absolutely.
ask, Joel, if you can email this to me, I can put it into a Word file, and then email it to you folks to send something back to me in Word file.
Yeah.
Does that work? Because I know, Michael, you like Word file, and I do as well.
Say, listen to how sophisticated Larry is. As far as the review goes, can we just, are we doing the same review process as we did last year? We couldn't do it publicly because of the assistant town administrator status at the same time as the interim town administrator status? Or are we doing this as we would any normal employee at this point, and it's not a public review?
I guess I'll take Joel's input. My opinion is this be a public review at this point.
Right.
It's not a staff
Yeah,
position.
the contract agreement is with an interim town administrator. It's got no basis back to the assistant, which was a personnel bylaw. Therefore, the board has to conduct a review in public.
I'm just checking.
Yeah.
I assumed that, but.
And let me first let Don speak before I say anything more.
It's real quick, I just want to pat the back of everybody who was involved with this. This looks a whole heck of a lot more professional than what we had in years past. We're almost there. I mean, but terrific job.
Larry, if I
Steve?
could, but again, it's a working document, so, I really encourage everybody to, if you see flaws in it, you think there are better ways to do this, let us know.
With your indulgence, what I would like to do is to, for a review coming up next week, is pick a couple of these that are relevant. There's no sense doing the whole goal set before the end of the year.
No.
And this evaluate on that, then we'll move forward, because this is 1/3
As
year
Michael said,
evaluation.
it's mainly town meeting years.
Okay,
Yeah, that's in the rearview mirror, so that should be like easy to do.
right.
Yes, yes.
And I'll pick a couple of spots we can talk, we can speak to. Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, now for what we really come for, if I could say that. I know that we've got Dan Pelletier and Griffin Ryder, our dynamic duo for all things comprehensive wastewater management plan, and they're joined this evening by Russ Kleekamp and his colleagues at GHD. As you all may recall, sometime, I think, late spring, early summer, Dan and Griffin had come to me and said they would like to engage in a small services contract for the purpose of trying to really just do a deeper dive on a lot of the data points related to the wastewater management plan and everything we're doing in East Harwich, and potentially looking to do throughout town and through DHY. So that's probably the most I should say about it, other than that Dan and Griffin have done a great job, and I think the presentation tonight should really be helpful for the board as we start re-engaging in conversations about DHY and other projects
Okay,
going forward.
thank you.
Will somebody explain what GHD is so the public?
Yes, a,
GHD is the engineering firm that was hired by the town that did the sewer modeling that is going to be presented this evening as part of Dan and Griffin's presentation.
what we've, just very quickly, what we've learned is that our CWMP was put together using water data that's now 15, 18 years old. And we have new data, new water data, probably better data. It's time to reevaluate some of that information going forward. So I'll turn it over to whichever, Joe, you didn't help me out. Who's going to start this? We have three choices.
I'm looking in the direction of Dan and
Dan
Griffin.
or,
This is Dan. I'm on. Sorry, I'm just working with Jamie. It looks like my screen resolution's a little big, so I just want to make sure that everyone at home can see the presentation.
we got it.
Bear with me here.
Can I do what?
Dan, Jamie's reloading that for you. In the meantime, anybody want to give some background narrative? That was a hint.
All right, let me see. All right. I believe Jamie's taking control. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So the town, yeah, let me just kick it right off here. So the town's adopted the CWMP back in 2016, I believe, as Larry had just alluded, as a living document to address the impaired water bodies within town. So since 2016, we've widened the Muddy Creek Bridge. We have got 2 active construction contracts out in East Harwich. The design for Cold Brook is well underway. I believe that's going to be going out to bid soon. In addition to this work that I just mentioned, Harwich has also been having conversations with DHY, which also began 2016, 2017, ultimately leading to the 2018 annual town meeting article, where the residents approved and authorized the Board of Selectmen to draft special legislation. So that special legislation was signed on October 11th, 2019. And after it was signed, the 3 towns were hired, Weston and Sampson, to do a peer review, which was presented at the Yarmouth Elementary School back in February of this year. So subsequent to the February meeting, Griffin and I presented 2 options. We presented a Route 28 option and a Harwich Center option. Jamie, if you can jump to the next slide. So the Harwich Center option was developed internally, and the Route 28 corridor was provided initially by CDM Smith. So following the March 9th meeting, I apologize, as Joe mentioned, we were asked to further vet and refine the figures that we had presented relative to the Harwich Center option for DHY. So when we had originally prepared those figures, we used our bid numbers from the contracts out in East Harwich. And while this was valuable for determining, an order of magnitude for scope, it lacked the detail to really hang your hat on. So After the presentation in March, we were asked to further vet and refine those numbers. And to assist us in that, we reached out to GHD, an engineering firm out of Hyannis. They've done a number of work in Chatham and other Cape towns. And what they were looking to do, or what we were looking for them to do, is their own independent analysis, a sewer CAD model, and prepare a technical memo that outlines all the details of Harwich Center and what that would look like should we pursue that in a DHY option. So with that, my presentation's relatively short. I'd like to hand it over to Russ Kleekamp from GHD to get into the meat and potatoes, if you will, of what they were able to put together.
Sure thing. Thanks so much, Dan, for the introduction. And Mr. Chairman, to the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Powers, thanks for giving us this opportunity to present tonight. So what I'd like to do to start is actually share my screen. Hopefully you can all see a Google Earth image come up. Maybe Dan, give me a thumbs up once you see that.
Got it.
All right. Very good. So for the record, my name is Russ Kleekamp. I'm an engineer with the company GHD. We are located, well, I guess before April, we were located in Hyannis, Mass. We're mostly at home now. Hopefully we'll be back in our office when we get through this year. But what we were tasked to do is to develop what they call a sewer CAD model of the study area that you're looking at. The study area is the outline, the purple outline. And what the sewer CAD model allows us to do is develop the limits of a gravity and a low pressure sewer system. And ultimately why we do this is to come up with some very good information to develop planning level cost estimates. So we can use those numbers moving forward to help meet the wastewater needs of the town. So I'll explain what you're looking at here. This is the area we were asked to look at. The lines in red depict the gravity sewer mains. The lines in blue depict the low pressure sewer mains. And likewise, the shaded parcels, I'll zoom into an area, the kind of light tan shaded parcels represent parcels that would be served by a gravity sewer. The blue parcels would be parcels that are served by a low pressure sewer. The reason why we like to use Google Earth is it offers a lot of benefits just for presentation purposes. Everybody's familiar with Google Earth, zooming in, zooming out, things like that. But you can also use it as a very good presentation platform. So what I'm going to do is turn the sewer manholes on. And because of the labeling, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. And what you can see is a color coding, or hopefully what you can see is a color coding of the manholes. Generally for presentation, we like to use a stoplight fashion where with like a green, yellow, red sequence where the green is manholes between 3 and 9 feet, yellow is manholes between 10 and 14 feet, in red are manholes between 15 and 20 feet. I won't go into the super technical information of this. That all was included in our memorandum. I believe the board has received a copy of this that goes into the detailed elements of how the design came together. But what I will say is we work very closely with both Dan and Griffin to help establish this design criteria so that there is very good communication throughout the process. So when you're looking at the manholes here, for example, you can click on any one of these elements. And right in Google Earth, you get some great information that pops up. For example, this was one of the red manholes right in front of a pump station. You can see this one was 22.77 feet deep. This is, I believe, one of the deepest manholes that we have. But the majority of all the other ones are less than 20 feet. You can see here 17 feet, for example. So you can click on any one of the pipes, pump stations, manholes. You have all the attribute information pops up. And the nice thing about doing this platform, too, is that if you click on a parcel, you can get all the parcel information. This is directly from the assessor's database. So it's really an abundance of information at your fingertips. For a relatively modest engineering fee, you can extract the conceptual design information from a fairly large area. We do have profile information for all these. We can develop, we can depict that in AutoCAD and show very clearly what the depths of the sewers are, things like that. The other nice thing about Google Earth is that if you're looking at this for planning purposes, say we have a pump station on this parcel here, you can zoom right into Street View. So you can see right away where the parcel is or what the piece of land is that you're proposing for a pump station. The old way of doing this, you'd have to look at an old topographic map and pick out all the sites and drive out there and visit it, which you still do. You still have to put your feet on the ground and see it, but it gives you a really good advanced look from the planning process. So bear with me as I zoom out and recenter here. So those are really just, this is the overview of the model and how it came together. The flow information that we use, I'm just going to turn the manhole layer off just so you can see it a little clearer. The flow information that we used to develop the model was based on the town's 2016 water use information. Dan passed along the last 5 years of flow information, and I understand that the 2016 water use information is the highest on record since 2020, so we felt that was an appropriate starting point. But now what I'm going to do is actually have Lena take control, and I'm going to show you a quick example of the actual model and what some of the benefits are for both the proposed and existing sewer system. So hopefully, Dan, if I can get the thumbs up again with the, got the model, good. So this is what you're looking at here is the actual modeling software. This is SewerCAD from Bentley. And this is the approach that we've used working with the other towns that we provide wastewater services, Falmouth, Chatham, Uxbridge, a few other towns around the area. So what you see here is the same area, it's just the parcels. And you see, again, this green, yellow, orange pipe. So this model was built with the 2016 water use information. So the green pipes are pipes that have an abundance of capacity left, greater than 75% remaining capacity. And then the yellow pipes have a little bit less capacity. Then the orange pipes have even less capacity. The orange pipes are between 50 and 80% full. So this is a kind of a color coordination sequence that we use when we input the initial flow information. So this is what we're about to show you is really the benefit of the SewerCAD model. So I know that there's in every town we work in, there's always discussion. Well, what about impacts on a sewer system with future development, whether it's 40B, restaurant, motel, whatever it may be. At some point down the line, you'll have an applicant that approaches the town and says, I want to do this development and I want to add X amount of gallons. So let's just pretend that this area was sewered and we were using the 2016 flow information, and a developer approaches the town. He wants to do a restaurant and add a very large flow. For the purposes of demonstration, I'm just going to say 200,000 gallons per day. So you can see as we're talking, Lena's putting this in the model, enters the flow scenario, and then she'll go and run the model, does its calculations, and we'll see it comes up with the results here. Now what you see in town is not just the green, yellow, and orange, but you also see red and black. So what the red indicates is a pipe that's between 80 and 100% full, and what the black means are pipes that are over capacity. Under this condition, if we design this sewer system with these pipe sizes and diameters, if you had this developer or whoever it is come and want to add 200,000 gallons per day, anywhere where you see the black sewer mains, you could expect surcharging. That's sewage coming out of the manholes. Obviously, that's a very bad thing. We don't want that. We want to prevent that. So based on our scope that was provided to us, we use the 2016 water use information. We haven't looked too much into future flows, proposed flows. The model is very easy to update if you know the future flows, things like that. I think Dan mentioned that the CWMP is a living document. Well, the model is just like that. It's a living model as well. This gets updated and developed as the CWMP gets developed, and also as information comes into the town. So this is really a good example of how we can use this for a design scenario for a proposed sewer system. And likewise, once you have an existing sewer system in town, you can model that as well. Those are pipes in the ground. They're known diameters. There's finite capacities. So if you have the sewer model, you can very easily run flow evaluations. Before the modeling software, this was a very long-winded engineering exercise that would cost thousands of dollars to do. But you can see now with the model, it's something that can be done very efficiently. So with that, I'm going to pause for any questions real quick. I'm about to go into the cost estimating portion of this presentation. Does the board, or are there any questions?
Russ, let me, if I may, we got into a lot of detail very quickly. Let me just go back sort of at the beginning and say the reason that we started looking at this is if we're considering DHY, we initially looked at doing the Herring River watershed, and then we decided that it might make more sense to look at Harwich Center since we're trying to revitalize Harwich Center. The question that we have is the initial DHY agreement, if we were to move forward with that, would have us commit to a capacity buy-in of approximately 600,000 gallons per day for the initial phases. And so we wanted to relook at that, whether that flow made sense or not with this other area. Do we have to commit to that much and meet one of our CWMP goals? And I think we'll probably get into this, Russ and Dan and people, but it looks like if we take this, my read of your report, if we take this area we've talked about, your flow is about 215,000 gallons per day. And our CWMP has an overall town growth potential of 26%. Bringing to an end, it's possible that what we would need to accomplish this in terms of a buy-in to a regional plant is 300,000 gallons per day, not 600,000 gallons per day. And that's based on, we had good data going into the CWMP, but now we have better data. We have up-to-date water usage data for the last several years, and I think you've pointed, we chose even the sort of the worst case on that. So that's one of the uses of this, specifically what we're trying to get at this. And we've shown how, Russ has shown how we build this up. But it can have great financial impacts going forward in our plan doing this. And so, excuse me, Russ, for that, but I wanted to set the stage of what we were trying to get at the end.
No, very, very good, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the comments. I'll pull up a spreadsheet now, and we'll talk a little bit about the costs and the cost estimates here. So let me share my screen again here. Share. Dan, one more time, thumbs up, Google Earth. All right, so I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet. And again, this spreadsheet was included in the technical memorandum that was shared with the board. So again, this is the approach that GHD uses to come up with cost estimates for these large-scale sewer planning projects. We use very similar approaches for Chatham and Falmouth with very good success. So when we develop a cost estimate for a new area like this, obviously the first thing we do is look at recent bid results. That's very good, very useful information. So we consider that. But there's a few other things that we do as well, too, that we really want to make sure that we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. For example, we reach out to the material vendors. We understand what's going on with current markets. I'll give you one quick, for example, the hurricanes that just recently hit the Gulf Coast. They knocked out the electricity that feeds the plant that develops the resin for PVC pipes. That resulted in a very sharp increase in the cost of PVC pipes, which is one of the more common materials used in sewer design. And that things like that can happen very, very quickly. So if you're not up to date, if you're not up to speed on your cost estimates and what's going on in the market, especially in this day and age, you need to be to develop accurate costs. Then we also talk with contractors too. If there's things that need a closer look or closer investigation, for example, like the dewatering, we don't just slap a number of $1 million on there and consider it to be a placeholder. We actually look at the pipes, the depths of the pipes. We determine what the estimated level of groundwater is from the Board of Health, the septic records, the test pit information that was done in recent areas. We know in most of the areas we looked at, groundwater is between elevation 0, 1, or 2. So if our pipes are deeper than that, we can estimate what the costs are associated with that. So we use our recent bid information, communication with vendors, communication with contractors to help start the cost estimate. And then we're at this level, rather than showing numerous bid items like you'd see in a final bid, we kind of lump things together in general categories. For example, we have mobilization, the sewer lines that are greater and less than 10 feet or in town road or state roads. There's different paving requirements in state roads that have different costs associated. Low pressure mains, force mains, manholes, dewatering. Paving the primary and secondary roads. We talked very closely with Griffin and with the highway department to make sure that we understood the condition of the current roads. And we put together a estimated cost per unit foot that we were very confident in that would meet the requirements of the rehabilitation of the roads. So with every one of these line items, there was close communication with both Griffin, Dan, and other parties as necessary. So that develops the unit cost for each item. The sewer modeling software gives us quantities very quickly. We can update the model. It can update the quantities very efficiently. And we have this broken into 4 study areas. It's the north, central, southwest, and southeast areas. And then we have the grand total at the far right of the spreadsheet. So the first gray line is just the sum. It's our estimated construction subtotal. At this early phase of a design, we use a contingency of 30%. It's our expectation that if this was the area that we were tasked to look at in the future for preliminary and final design, that these numbers would always go down. I am very well aware, and I've learned throughout my career that the first numbers that you present are often the numbers that are remembered from everybody. So there was a lot of great care and effort put into these numbers and what's being presented in front of you. But still, even with that, we have to put a 30% contingency on just because there are unknowns. There could be utility conflicts. There could be other things that come up during the preliminary and final design. So we want to make sure that you're covered for that. So that gets us to the second gray line, which is our construction total. We add another 30%. And again, that's a standard percentage at an early phase. And that covers the fiscal, legal, and engineering. That's the engineering during design and also the construction phase services. That number may be less than that depending on what the final scope of work is. But for now, it's just a placeholder. And that brings us down to our total project cost for each one of these areas, which is the third gray line. Now, we know that these are not all going to be completed in the year 2020, so we have projected out to 2025 to 2031 based on a 3% inflation rate for each one of the sections, so the town can plan accordingly for these sections. And this would be the same approach if there was other areas in town that we would look at this for. We'd give a projection on what the future construction costs are. So ultimately, the last thing I'd like to share and leave with the town is, and I believe this document here has also been presented to the board. It's how do we know this works? Well, we know it works because this is a quick summary of GHD's. This is all of our multi-million-dollar wastewater projects bids in the last 10 years. It's not just the good ones, it's all of them. And we are very good with cost estimating. You know, in almost all the cases, we have a number that allows the towns to move forward with their wastewater needs. So we are very confident with this approach. So with that, I will first, thank you for everybody's time. We really appreciate it, and I'll do my best to answer any questions.
Joe, maybe we want to
Larry,
go back to Dan. And
Larry, if I could just take a quick shot before we jump into questions, just to kind of summarizing quickly what we just discussed here, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, please.
So, you know, Dan, I think both Dan and I are happy with the results of the model. You know, what this model allows us to do is a couple of different things. It provides for a validation of the analysis that Dan and I had done back in March, and not only of the analysis of the flows, but also of the costs. And when we looked at flows, you know, I think we were looking at somewhere on the order of 200,000 gallons, let's call it unweighted. I think, you know, GHD has come up with about 215,000 gallons unweighted. So we're really right in that ballpark, and figuring in some additional growth and whatnot. I think we would be right at about that 300,000 gallon mark, Mr. Ballantyne, if we were to make a commitment to DHY, if the town were to move forward with DHY and make a flow commitment. The model also provides for a preliminary design. Not only does the model give us quantities and you know, things that we can use to develop costs, but, you know, as Russ mentioned, you know, all this information can be dropped into AutoCAD and profiles created and whatnot. It's not a construction level design, but it's a 20-25% level design that can be used moving forward. And finally, it gives us the model provides an analysis tool that the town can use moving forward, not only for planning and cost estimating and design, but also for operations. You know, when this East Harwich system does go into operation, if a model were to be built of that system and someone down the line were to come in and say, want to build a large development, you know, I think with a couple keystrokes, we could say, all right, plug in X amount of flow, and then we could identify, you know, what the impacts may or may not be and what the downstream improvements would need to be in order to tie into the Chatham system as we are. So I think there is a lot of information that is built into this model, but it can be a very powerful tool and a tool that can continue to be used not only for planning, but also for operations as we as we move into operations. You know, sewer is a little bit new to the town of Harwich, but we're learning a lot, and we're learning a lot quickly. And as Larry said, you know, the data is changing. We do have better water data than what we had initially. And because of that, I think there's some changes that we will be talking about soon, or at least some things that we need to think about in East Harwich, and throughout town, throughout the entire CWMP. You know, I think the CWMP is 5 years old, so it's ripe for another relook to figure out the way that the town can move forward in the most cost-efficient way. In the most cost-efficient way. You know, we know sewer is going to be very expensive, but we need to do it in the most meaningful and smart growth way that we can in order to, you know, save the residents as much dollars as we can. And with that, I'll throw it over to the board for any questions that they might have for Dan, myself, or GHD. Thank you.
Questions? Michael?
Griffin, thank you. Thanks for being part of all this great information and a great presentation. And thanks for turning your sign around. I don't see Orleans in there today. Where do we get this? This is the first I've seen of it, and Russ mentioned a memo. I don't recall seeing a memo, and there's no links on my computer, so I can't go back and look at this when I want. So can I get an email with the memo and an email with the links?
It should be, excuse me, Michael, it was sent out, should have been sent to you, the whole draft memo.
Should have been, but it wasn't.
Well, we'll resend it then.
Well, because we thought it was received by all the board members. It was the executive summary report from GHD that we sent out either Thursday or Friday.
Okay, I didn't get it.
So we'll make sure you get that.
Thank
To our emails.
Say again?
That was to our emails. It wasn't in Dropbox.
Correct, that was to the emails,
I'm in my email.
to get it to the board as far in advance as we could, unfortunately.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't.
So we'll
I don't
follow up
have-
on that, and apologies on that one.
That's it, really. I think this is great data, and I think we ought to have the conversation about creating this model for the rest of East Harwich as the conversations go forward on East Harwich.
Absolutely, Michael. That's, this is I appreciate the work that Griffin, Dan, and Joe have done on this, because we have some important decisions going forward. And you can say having some information may inform those decisions in a way that's possible. We do need, this is a good example of looking towards West Harwich. We need to do the same type of exercise at East Harwich, and and move forward. This is the start. So we'll resend that memo out.
Yeah, I don't think I got it either, Larry.
I shall forward it myself when I get home. Again, Ed?
Well, surprisingly, I did get it. Usually the one that doesn't.
That is surprising.
Except,
But you still maintain your position as an outlier.
but one of the things I didn't get is, you mentioned a spreadsheet that was part of the agenda packet?
Is part of that report,
Oh, it's part of that report.
part of the
Okay.
report.
Okay, good, all right.
And we'll resend that. And we'll continue, this is the opening discussion, folks, so we'll continue this. Don?
I know that we were somewhat trepidatious, I guess is the word, about spending money to go back over the same territory we've already done. From my perspective, and I'm pretty sure, based on what Michael was saying too, is that this is the best money we've ever spent in the sewer realm. I mean, the confidence level of the town isn't so high at the moment, but to have something like this that can either confirm or update and validate in a real, I don't know, confidence-building way is really a good thing.
It's
And
easy
if I
to,
may, it's been an excellent process on our end as well, from town staff level.
Yeah.
So,
Mainly because it's been difficult to hear from people, well, we gave you that estimate 2 years ago, and sorry, it was 80% off, or things like that ruin everybody's confidence level.
And we're fortunate to have Dan and Griff, who are knowledgeable engineers that can work through this process and give us meaningful data as long as the consulting help. But we have in-house expertise that we're fully taking advantage of, and then they're relying on consultants to help out. And Joe's been part of this as well. Just as a is a quick reminder, because sometimes, Michael, I think you mentioned it last time, but sometimes we forget because it's been going on so long, is that we aren't doing this just to spend money. We're doing it because we're under a lawsuit. Indirectly, CLF is Conservation Law Foundation has sued EPA, has sued DEP, and they've gone after, and it rolls downhill, that we have to clean up our water embayments. Now, one of the, and so we need to move ahead with our CWMP. Now, our chore is to do it as cost effectively as possible. And sometimes we forget this. This started with the 208, so-called 208 process with SMass, University of Massachusetts, using models that for Harwich directed us that we could solve this problem by not having to sewer 100% of the community, which is most often the case, but by sewering 50% of the community. So already we've managed to save about half the potential cost in doing this. Even though it's an extremely expensive project, we've been working on that even at the very beginning. And with use of this type of process, we hope to even save more money. We did that with the Chatham, the buying the regional plant, that was a cost savings. I think at DHY is a possible cost savings, but we have to get the data because we have, as a board, we have some interesting decisions going forward. If we go forward, we have to weigh then, do we complete, we get lost in numbers, contact 3 of phase 2? Would we complete phase 3 as originally designed in the CWMP as being the North Pleasant Bay watershed? Do we move into an alternative phase through going to DHY? We need to have the best data available to make that decision, and this starts us down that road. Ed?
In looking at the material that's been presented thus far, and based on my experience with other projects, this review is sort of like having an owner's project manager review of the preliminary design work that was done. And it's, I think, will be very important to continue doing that as we go through each successive project or phase or whatever we want to call it over the next 30 years to get an outside review before we move ahead on any particular project.
Yep. Joe?
Just to follow up on the report that GHD provided, the email was sent on Thursday morning at 9:54, so it was intended to go out to every member of the board, but if you didn't get it, we'll look into why that didn't happen. Because the intent there was to get this robust report to you well in advance of this, I think, fantastic presentation tonight.
Yeah.
And then I just want to sort of build off of first to Selectman Howell's comments. On behalf of Dan and Griffin, thank you, because, you know, I'll put it right out there. The pandemic gave us a cover to hold off on the DHY agreement that was on a fast pass for town meeting. Whether it would have passed or not is a different topic. So pandemic caused us to stop, and then, as you've heard, Dan and Griffin chomping at the bit to get into it. What they're looking to get into is data validation and information that we can build our decision-making on going forward. And Selectman Howell used the word that I'm hoping that the residents take as they hear this presentation, and that is confidence. And that's what I'm working on, and I know Griffin and Dan support that, is trying to rebuild confidence in the community that whatever decisions we make going forward, they're decisions that are based in fact and decisions that have been vetted by data, and always decisions that are being made with the best interest of the town at heart. Because quite simply, and it was 2 days into my tenure here, but we started off on the wrong foot with the process that blew up financially, and we need to get back on track so that you all can have the difficult discussions you have to have, as you've said, and we can also start making decisions that impact our neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, I stand corrected, I did receive it.
All right, that's
on
two.
Thursday.
just went through, I got emails on both sides of it.
Came from
I don't
Danielle.
have it.
Neither do I.
Okay,
Yep.
well, we'll resend it.
And I apologize for that. We'll correct that.
No worries.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, folks, and we'll, as you know, we'll be in touch.
Great presentation.
Great presentation.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Moving next in is the update of the status of liquor licensing hearings, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I had a conversation with council today ahead of this meeting tonight, and where I haven't come up with a full-fledged plan yet. However, I want to assure the board, and by extension the public, that the 2 liquor license hearings that started in earnest in the summertime, we're basically going to do a redo, if you will. We're going to re-advertise everything, and we are developing a strategy that should give all parties comfort that when we conduct the hearings, it will be in a safe manner, but equally importantly, it will be in an expeditious manner. And I'm hopeful that the plan that I come up with council will be acceptable to all parties involved, with the understanding as this is the town's best effort. We will continue forward with the hearings, whether there's full agreement to the mechanism or not.
Okay.
So more to come sooner rather than later.
Okay, Joe. Michael?
Just as an update to the board, Joe, can we get, and I think it's important going forward, especially since we just allowed for tents to stay up for another 60 days. Can we get a report from the police department on noise complaints, past and current? We haven't heard anything about this summer at all. I will tell you, the noise committee meeting last week was very contentious. And I have asked the chair and told the chair that I would be having a discussion with the board, which I have gone to Larry, about suspending their meetings and getting a report on what's been voted, and the board being more directly involved so that the board can give some further direction. It's evolved into something that it wasn't designed for. Some of the input that's coming in is adding things that we never requested, and it's specifically targeting through and concerned residents, and for good reason, concerned residents, but specifically targeting individual businesses. There's a great level of frustration coming out from some board members as well as some of the public to the committee. So I think they're taking an unwarranted beating. So I'm going to send a more detailed email to Larry as far as what that topic should be. But I think the board needs to suspend the noise committee meeting until they get some further direction from this board. And I would suggest that we do that sooner than later because given the pandemic, I understand why we are where we are, but residents are waiting for us to act. And Selectman Ford, I believe, said it, certainly in a conversation to me, but quality of life for some of our residents, specifically in Harwich Port, and people that had endorsed the bans and the expansion of entertainment in Harwich are now complaining, and they're complaining a lot. And I think that we are now sitting on them having the ability to relax in their own homes, and they feel very frustrated that we're not taking any action. And I do understand why we haven't, but going forward, I think this board needs to, we're giving a lot, and in some cases, we're not getting a lot back. And I do think it's time that the board take some actions and give these people peace of mind that we're paying attention.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I would just echo what Michael has said. The frustration level out there is very, very high, and I know you know that, Joe. You've been exposed to this, and it just seems to roll on and on. You know, you can cite specific businesses, but I don't think that's necessarily very helpful. It's more about what Michael was saying is we've got to come up with a solution to this. We have to address it and address it soon. Because as Michael said, you know, the people who initially were excited and supportive of these businesses are now very, very upset about it, and you know, they want some action. So the sooner we can schedule hearings, the sooner we can have resolutions to hearings. I think that's what we need to do.
Joe?
So if I can respond to both comments, because they're timely and helpful, in that I had received an email from, is it Mr. Cohn? who is the chair of the Noise Containment Committee, I believe. Am I-
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, thank you. He had sent some information to me last week, and I advised council that I had these, I believe they're videos. I haven't reviewed anything yet, but these are videos that residents have been taking throughout the summer. And so I had a conversation with council about that, and that's what I meant about a redo. When we do notice to these establishments, we're going to advise them that there are specific charges that the board already remanded to me. But beyond that, there is significant public input, and if the public is willing to participate in the hearing in some level, to talk to what they've experienced firsthand, I can incorporate that into the process, and by extension, offer it to you with any decisions that are rendered from those hearings. So it allows us to incorporate information that we didn't have at the time. So if there is a silver lining, I would offer that's one of them. Beyond that, there is a timeliness factor because, and I think I've mentioned it to the board before, and then you may know that in my background in other communities off Cape, I served for 5 years as the head of licensing commission. And so in doing that every day, you become very familiar with all the statutes. And there is a concept in law known as the Ballerin factors. And it was a case in the city of Boston, but the case law informs or can inform all local licensing authorities that when it comes time for you to issue a license and you do that process, or renew a license, you can impact upon the Ballerin factors. And Selectman McCaskill used one of the key phrases, quality of life. You're allowed to use that when you adopt the Ballerin factors as a decision maker, and you don't have to do it universally. You can do it to a particular license. You talk about the reputation of the applicant. You talk about the standing in the community. You talk about the quality of life in the community. So we're talking about noise, but very real sense, I want the licensees to understand that the board, as local licensing authority, could rely upon these case law factors to use that to render a decision on renewal, whether or not there were alleged violations pending. So the message is going to change, and it's going to become much more clearer and stronger as far as I can see.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. And just to follow up, Joe and I have discussed about putting this as an agenda item next week. And we're also meeting with the police chief tomorrow.
Correct.
To discuss a bit more of the noise issues that you bring up. So I know Joel's been very active in this. We need to figure out what our best actions are. Appreciate that, Joe.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Joe, you want to cover this? Personal
Well, I do,
bylaw?
and this was one of the other documents that I was making reference to. I have my packet, and I don't see that the compensation tables were included.
It's in the Dropbox.
So you have it and I don't. So I apologize for that. And again, that ties back to the issues we had with the electricity on Friday throughout the week, and it was just fixed today. But the recommendation is that the compensation tables, with the exception of the seasonal employees, be adopted at the 1% level, as we've talked in previous meetings. So if the board is willing to accept that, that would be the motion that I'd ask you to make tonight, is to confirm the personnel bylaw employee compensation plan tables separate from seasonal, which we take up every year during season, to affect a 1% increase in wages.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Discussion, or I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Okay, I'll take Don?
Yeah, just to reiterate what we've been saying for the last 8 months, this is a really difficult time, that we're experiencing. We don't know when we're going to come out the other end of the tunnel, and it would be foolhardy to commit to spend more than that without knowing more than we do know. So, this is nothing against any employees or any group of employees. It's a self-survival thing for the entire town.
Right. Okay, I'll take a roll call. Don?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Next is the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start right at the outset in saying that I know the memo is missing, and as I explained Previously, I'm expecting that this to be the last contract that I update you on that does not have my cover memo. As I mentioned before, there'll be a department head meeting later this week, talking about the concept of procurement, incorporating the checklist and all the information that the board's looking for. Having said that, this was a contract that the fire chief presented through procurement. You can see through the memorandum from the town engineer on behalf of procurement that it is the Northeast Rescue Systems Incorporated for the purchase of fire department personal protection equipment, and the total for the contract was $24,848, which matched at the time the signing authority that I had. So that contract has been executed, and process beyond memo has been completed. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, that completes my report.
Okay, thank you, Joe. We'll move next to Selectmen's reports. Stephen?
I got nothing.
Michael?
Mine is one comment, and it reverts back to the new business on the 40B projects. I think it'd be appropriate that the Housing Committee retracts its vote on the support of a non-application. They did pledge their support for a project that wasn't a project. So if somebody could reach out to Art Bowden, I think it's appropriate that they take that off the table until there's a project for them to vote on.
We did say that at the trust meeting, but if Steve could reconfirm that as the liaison, it would be helpful.
You okay with that, Steve? Follow
Yep.
up?
They misguided.
Yeah.
They accepted it anyway.
Okay, good. Michael, anything else?
None.
Ed?
Well, just something that I don't think anybody can be missing. As you can see from the sticker, I voted today, and
Just
I vote on election day.
it's very restful to do it downstairs
I-
today without a whole lot of hustle and hurly-burly, and the more that it happens during this week, the less it'll happen, less the rush it'll be on
Yeah.
election day.
I take that. I still think of election day as being special, so I like to vote on that day. But Don?
You and I may be the only two there then. You're going to hate me, but there's several things. I did get that email that I was saying to you from an abutter of the community center, and it appears that our good friends at the Cape Light Compact had never actually contacted any abutters about the photovoltaic cell installation there, and he's got a legitimate concern. He doesn't even know what they're up to. So
Did you get I got a follow-up email of that saying that he found the plans and he felt better about it now.
yeah, but he should have been contacted.
And, well, he should have been, but I also sent an email, I know to Joel and to Jamie, I think about, to make that more visible on our town website so anyone could look at it. Because now I think you had to go to the CVAC website in order to see that plan.
We would have reached out if we were
And
building it.
It should have, 2 points, you should have reached out, but we should make it more transparent from our side too, I think. And
Okay.
Joe,
Yeah, if I can quickly explain on that one, and to be blunt, CVAC was moving far faster than they should have. They had a prospective application in for the planning board, but the town still hasn't finalized the estoppel process that we talked about before on one of the projects. And so on Friday, I believe, Friday past, they have withdrawn their applications to the planning board without prejudice so that they can actually do the estoppel process first, and then abutters notices and all of that would have gone out. So they really put the cart before the horse, and Charlene was able to impress upon them why they should take those actions.
okay. Don?
Yeah, secondly, this is a quick one. I want everybody to understand that the road paving that's I believe is totally out of control. I'm not even sure if there is a point person for this. Is not our sewer project. It's National Grid paving because they dug new gas lines, but there doesn't seem to be a plan. Just mentioning that. Because
I've gotten emails to the same extent of who's organized this, different, you know, you can't get around town right now.
You couldn't have organized it this badly if you tried. I would like agended the appointment of our legal counsel, Chapter 7-8 of the
Yeah.
Code of Town of Harwich asks for us to do that every year. I can't recall the last time that ever happened, but I may be the only one who's not happy entirely, but I think we should at least have the discussion that we're supposed to have.
Can you give me that reference again, please?
7-8 of the Harwich Code, it's not the charter, it's the code itself. And finally, as you heard tonight, the 40B process is rather critical for people who are living in an area that's affected by it. We've got 2 vacancies that we need to fill on the ZBA. I've asked for this before, but the public needs to understand it in a way that it actually gives them some motivation. What we talked about earlier is listened to by the ZBA members. That's one of their primary duties, 40B applications. It is serious. We need serious people to apply. Right now, all we can do is move 2 alternates to 2 full-time positions, but since they could have sat in a particular meeting in that capacity anyway, we're not doing anything but realigning the deck chairs here. We need more people.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll take a roll call. Steve?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
It's absentee call.
Ed? Don?
Yeah,
Don,
yeah.
aye.